Hello people, I'm Jaby Koay, joined by Ricardo, Elliott II, also known as Raw 2.0. We're gonna talk about Barfi, the movie starring Ranbir Kapoor, Priyanka Chopra, and Eliana de Cruz. Just right off the bat, we're gonna give you our general thoughts in, short detail, and then we're gonna do our breakdown. Right over Ricky Elliott's face, Raw 2.0's face, we have the breakdown of what we're gonna cover in this review, just so you guys know what's coming. You said that this is a 4 out of 5 for you, and I feel the same way. It's a 4 out of 5 for me, but we're in two totally different areas on that feeling. What you have to understand about Ricky is that he loves films just like I do, and so he'll pick it apart and criticize it, but he'll still be able to give it a good score because he's understanding while criticizing it.
Looking at you, Star Wars.
What? Well, you have what? I missed
Star Wars.
What about Star Wars?
Everyone hates it, but I'm like, you can still love it even though there's things that aren't great.
Right, that's true. Basically, we come from the perspective of you can be critical of something and still really appreciate it, as you guys have learned about me on this channel. We're gonna start off with the IMDb just to give you a quick rundown in case it's been a while since you've seen the movie. 3 young people learn that love can neither be defined nor contained by society's definition of normal and abnormal. This comes from IMDb. I think that's a little bit inaccurate because it's not about the 3 young people that learn that. It's about us, the audience, that learns that through them. If this isn't one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen, well shit. This is really, really gorgeously shot.
Yeah.
I thought it was a beautiful movie, and I really enjoyed how it started out and came together at the end. The adventure was a little bit wonky just because it was non-linear and kind of going all over the place. It's a foreign language film for us, so it's like there's this extra layer to keep up with. But in general, I thought it came together and it moved me. I thought that it had a strong message behind it, and I enjoyed it. How about yourself?
The same. I thought that the overall structure was interesting. It doesn't help that I was sort of tired when we watched it, but I appreciated that it was non-linear in the end, and I thought that it was, like you said, it was one of the most beautiful movies I've seen. Also, the location, wherever they are, it was like, I've never really seen that side of India before, and I was like, this looks beautiful. And they really used that to their, its maximum potential. And
right.
Everywhere they go, really, even where it's like, where they go somewhere nice or they go somewhere not so nice, it's still like, all of it was just so beautiful, and seeing them go through this story play out through these different areas, it was beautiful. I loved it.
They said Darjeeling like 7 times in the corner of the film, and Ricky was like, where did they shoot this? Those are our general thoughts. We both really enjoyed it. Again, coming from different perspectives. If you're just wondering whether or not you should watch it, if you haven't yet, it's been out for several years, but I understand the possibility that some of you may have not seen it. I definitely recommend watching it. It's a different movie. It's definitely my cup of tea. There are some things I would have done differently, but still overall, I really, really like it. Now we're gonna break this down. Like we both said in the general thoughts, it was a very, very beautiful movie. Like, the framing was just so, you could just feast on it. It was a film you could basically learn off of if you were a new filmmaker, hungry for something interesting to teach you all the different ways you can shoot a movie in a very interesting form. I think that this film covers the gamut of interesting shots, interesting color palettes, interesting locations, and using those locations to its advantage. The colors just pop out of the screen. If nothing else, that is the reason to watch this movie. You were saying it had kind of a French feel to it.
The way the music is playing, and it's more, I don't know what that instrument is. I'm forgetting what it is right now. It may have been accordion.
Okay.
I don't know. But also the style felt really French, but that might be just because I love romantic films and they're all French.
Right.
I don't know. The cinematography was really, right now I'm looking at the IMDb. I remember that shot when they're in the back of that truck and they're in those tubes, and I was like, those look really cool, and you're seeing that wide shot of them in there and traveling. I love the whole sequence when they're doing their basically that montage of them traveling.
I'm glad you picked up on that because that was a moment where I didn't know exactly where they were.
Yeah.
The director started out not showing you everything, and then he showed you everything because you asked the question, where are they? What's going on? And then he answers it for you. And every question you ask in the movie, the director answers, Anurag Basu. I think Anurag Basu took a bold approach to this film. I was reading a little bit in the Wikipedia because he initially wrote this as a linear form. He realized that the movie would be boring if it was linear, so he took the non-linear approach, which was a risk from my understanding because Indian films didn't really do that. To me, that's like a bold approach. It's always bold to me to do non-linear anyway because you run the risk of completely losing your audience, which for about a good 45 minutes, Ricky and I almost called you Barfi. Ricky and I were lost for a little bit because it's like the movie kept jumping around between 3 or 4 different timelines, and I'm like, wait, where are we? It was like Inception gone wrong, but eventually I got back on track. I'm like, okay, it's all kind of coming together now. Now it's cohesive again. And fortunately, at the end, everyone appreciated what he did. That's the important part.
We were talking about like Christopher Nolan's movies, like it's just a really interesting way to give out details in pieces,
right?
Especially when it's done well. That creates so much mystery. It just makes it that much more interesting, and it's that much more of a challenge for the filmmakers to see that through and make it work. That's a very hard thing to do.
And for the audience in a way.
Yeah.
Like I was comparing it of all things to Memento, because Memento gives you information backwards and then it kind of comes together at the end. So there's that form of mystery and it revealing itself and coming together. Then there's the lazy form of mystery, which The Force Awakens did, where the little alien creature was like, that's a story for another day. And then runs off.
Where'd you get that?
A good question. For another time.
There's one other thing I wanted to comment on. Like, you've seen like 4 Indian movies now. There's a scene that was actually lost on us initially. I don't know how. Ranbir Kapoor realizes, this is spoilers. Ranbir Kapoor realizes his father passed away. You see the, what are those things called? Those burning body?
Oh, like a pyre?
The pyre, that's the word. He sees the pyre, he's got the pyre of his father burning, right? Neither of us knew what that was initially. Somehow, that was lost on us. And when I read the Wikipedia and it confirmed that the father died, I was like, wait a second. Did we see that? Was that even in the movie? And I went back in the Blu-ray and rewound it and I'm like, oh shit, like I realized that the way they did it was so good. And I just wasn't used to seeing that style in Bollywood movies because it was so subtle. It was like, you saw Ranbir Kapoor looking at the room and it didn't even like go on his face like a close-up. It was a profile shot and you could see the tears welling up in his eyes and I was like, wow, this is like really understated. This is really, really subtle. It was so subtle, Ricky missed it. Like, he's like, why are they looking at the fire? He just looks like he's pissed off about something. But like, when we put it together, we realized that it was actually really, really well executed. I was a big fan of the way he decided to handle that because very easily it could have been way over the top with music and close-up shots of him crying, but they decided to go the subtle route, which I really appreciated because the movie said a lot without saying things. That's powerful to me.
Yeah.
One thing you've heard me talk a lot about in any movie review I do is tone and consistency or inconsistencies of tone. I thought that this film was fairly consistent in its tone. Obviously, it's dealing with this love and affinity for films from other countries and where it comes from, the legacy of like Bollywood films. I mean, for the director, Anwar Basu, easily you could have a lot of mixed tones and styles. I felt like it came together and you did not as much.
Not as much, but not that it didn't at all.
Okay.
It tried to do a lot of it at one time, and I felt sometimes it didn't always gel together.
Yeah.
For the most part, it did a really good job. It wasn't too much like any one of them. That's one thing I did appreciate. The moment I always mention when we're talking about it is the one moment when there's like wire work. I think there was 2. I don't remember the second one, but when he jumps over the crowd when he's on the statue, right? The rest of the movie is all real, but that's that one like really surreal moment, and that sort of like surprised me. I don't know if it was bad. It just was a surprise.
For some reason that didn't bother me, and I think that it's because for me, somehow it still felt in line with the inspiration, which was Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, even though those two made a career out of doing things real and risky. I'm gonna just be real with you, like it doesn't come anywhere near the skill and level of Chaplin or Buster Keaton in terms of what Ranbir Kapoor's doing. He did a damn good job, but it doesn't come anywhere near what Chaplin and Buster Keaton were able to do. If you go back and watch their old movies, it's brilliant, and it's all these long one takes of them doing all this crazy stuff, and it's all real because there was no visual effects back then. They had to do it real. That's why, like, when he jumped over the crowd, to go back to that, it didn't seem out of the ordinary because everything was kind of extraordinary in terms of Chaplin and Buster Keaton. Things were nuts. It's not Buster Keaton or Chaplin, but some famous black and white actor is hanging from a clock tower.
Yeah, and there's like an homage to it, sort of, when he's kicking the time back in the beginning when he's trying to get the girl's attention.
Yes.
That was definitely a reference to that. I almost expected him to be hanging off like the hour hand or something.
Jackie Chan may have borrowed this from the Chaplin era as well, but there seemed to be an homage to Project A. When they were riding around the city with the bicycle and knocking on the doors. That may have been borrowed from the black and white film era from American cinema, but Jackie Chan did something extremely similar and way better in Project A. If you guys want to know what I'm talking about, just look for Project A bicycle scene and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's amazing. one of the coolest things ever caught on film. While Barfi didn't measure up to that scene, I still appreciated like the nod to that scene. Like I think that it was still fun and in line with the general adventure of the movie. Like overall that kind of fun tone.
Yeah.
Going back to tone, I feel like even though we're in this like category, it feels like all over the place. I think that the film did a very, very good job of having this kind of fun, whimsical feeling throughout and still managing to find these moments of serious emotional points. Especially like that scene we were talking about earlier where his dad died. It's like the film was on this high so much that it went past us when his father passed away because it was like, it felt like it was still up here, even though the director brought it down here for a hot second. I love the tone. I love the style of the movie.
Yeah.
But the one thing you wanted to mention was also the music.
Yeah, which I mean, I liked the like original score and everything, and this goes back to what I was saying before about the clash of the inspirations and the influences were there. It felt sort of weird sometimes where the only one I can really remember very strongly was the end when they're doing their wedding dance and it's doing that like beautiful music, and then all of a sudden it just cuts back to like, I almost want to say like the Barfi theme or something, and it's really French, you know, it's like, it's sort of, the back and forth and up and down with it, it was sort of like threw me. What's the name of those guys we did that reaction to? The Indian Jam Project?
Oh, yeah, Indian Jam.
We need them to do, like they could have like done the main theme that they had, but made it more their own, made it more Indian, and it'd be beautiful.
Okay.
It'd flow better with the rest of the stuff, because that felt right out of Amelie or something.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that didn't bother me at all for some reason. But you're also a music guy, and so you're more tuned into that.
It's definitely not a big issue. It's something.
Right.
It's me.
Yeah. No, I totally get it.
Which is why I don't like knock it. That's sort of like why I give it a 4 out of 5. Like some of the stuff I have is just like me thinking I would have done this or that, but I can't fault them because they didn't do my idea. Like Star Wars.
For me, the music overall was very fun. I liked where it went. It was very nice on the ears is the easiest way I can put it. The only parts that stuck out to me as not as interesting was when they started doing the singing stuff in the film. And I know like that's just part of Bollywood cinema, but this time around, I didn't have subtitles during the song. So I'm just hearing dudes singing in another language and I don't know what they're singing about. It felt like I was removed from the movie, and it's not necessarily the film's fault. It's just there was no subtitles there for some god-awful reason. That goes back to these different styles coming together, because that is an example of like Bollywood style being part of this coalescing of different styles.
Yeah.
In that respect, I appreciate it because it's bringing together all these different film styles from around the world. Old American cinema and then French cinema and Indian cinema all coming together in this kind of great and beautiful way. I love that. And so in that regard, I give it respect. But like, I just wish that I had the lyrics, because then I would know for sure whether the story was good. But there were like a lot of coincidences that this film hinged on. It was predicated on all these things kind of functioning together in a way that like, okay, you can get one of those. You can get one coincidence that works for the story, but when you have like 5, it kind of messes with me a little bit because it feels like too many coincidences. And the director perfectly disguised all that in mixing up the storyline, because you're so caught up in trying to figure out what's going on that you kind of miss the fact that there are a lot of coincidences in the movie. By the time you even pick up on that, it's called refrigerator logic. Like, you go home, you open the fridge to make a sandwich, and then you realize, wait a second. Like, after the fact, I'm like, wait, there's a lot of things that kind of hinged on other things being at the same time. But the film's very whimsical anyway.
Yeah.
In general, I like the story. It's this adventure of a guy with a disability, so which allows it to have that kind of Chaplin feel to it. And it's not that often that you see a movie about a guy who's got such a major disability, except for like Daredevil or something.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing more of those. But I feel like in 2012, which is when this film came out, I believe, you didn't see that many of those. It wasn't like in massive abundance. Barfi started it all. Yeah. I know there's a film called My Name is Khan. I get it. Like there are films where there are main characters with disabilities. Forrest Gump. It's not often. It's still not often that you see that. The majority of films are starring normal people. I like that aspect of it. The short of it is, Barfi falls in love with the girl, Eliana Cruz. It doesn't quite work out, and then he falls in love with Jim Lee, who is the first person to stand by him when he cuts the lamppost in half. How he finds so many lampposts that look exactly the same is beyond me. But I love that test. I love that he did that. It didn't do as much for you in the moment.
That's because I didn't I wasn't thinking about it.
Right.
I was sort of tired.
Right, no, I get it. What you have to keep in mind is we were watching the movie after he got off like a 10-hour shift at work. I love that lamppost thing. I thought that was awesome. I don't know why, it's like the hopeless romantic inside of me that wants to come out. When he did it the first 2 times, people ran, and you know what's coming. Yeah. The 3rd time he does it, the person's not gonna run. I didn't, for some reason, expect it to be with Priyanka Chopra or Jimly. And when it happened and he just like embraced her, it moved me. It like really moved me. I was like, wow, that's so cool. Like the stupid sappy part of me came out. See, I'm not dead inside. I'm not a robot. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was beautiful. At that point, he just kind of threw caution to the wind. And he's like, this is it. This is my future now. And you were saying, yeah, that's like
it's his character. That's
yeah.
exactly what he would do to make a decision.
Yeah.
Something that ridiculous and beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. That would be his logic. In general, I like the story. Again, it hinges on a lot of coincidences, but it's fine. Like the movie's whimsical anyway. Coincidences can happen in a film. I'm just kind of a cynic, and so when you throw too many of those my way, it's like, back up. Ranbir Kapoor did an amazing job in this movie.
He's amazing.
Yeah. You had some reservations about Priyanka's performance. But you were saying that may not be her fault.
I thought maybe she was a little too pretty.
Okay. Well, I mean, she can't help that.
But it also, we were talking, it may have been like the cinematography and the way they edited it. Like there's some shots where it's really close in her face. It seemed like it was over the top.
Yeah.
But maybe it wasn't, but maybe it was just her, but like she's really lost in that role. She's dressed way down. You can't see her sometimes, but other times I could, and maybe that's what I think I was feeling. I can see her and I'm like, I can see her doing an impression.
Okay. Okay, let me say this. When I first saw the trailer, I didn't even recognize her. Like, I thought it might have been her, but she looked so different. I'm like, that can't be her, that can't be right. And so when I watched her in the film, I noticed that she was very, very, very consistent in her behavior.
Yeah.
And I actually really appreciated that. The only thing that was confusing was I wasn't exactly clear about her age. I wasn't sure if she was supposed to be playing younger or if that was just the behavior of her as an adult. Eventually it became clear that that was her behavior as an adult. And I actually really appreciated her acting. I thought that, you know, she did a very good job of staying in that character the whole time. The one part that Ricky's talking about where the cinematography did not work in her favor is when
the rickshaw.
Yeah, is it a rickshaw?
Or was it a wagon?
It was a wagon. She was looking at the guy whipping the horse or something, or a cow or whatever. I don't know what he was whipping, but he was making a sound. Priyanka or Jimly was making the same sound, and the camera was this tight on her face as she made like the nastiest face.
And it cut really sharp back and forth, and like when it would cut back,
yeah,
it was like a totally different, like she wasn't doing that at all. She was just sitting there.
Right. It was a little bit of a jump cut there. I agree with you on that particular part. Like that wasn't the most complimenting angle for her for that expression. But outside of that, I actually really liked what she did when she was kind of getting uncomfortable and losing her shit. I believed her. There was no part of me that was going, Priyanka's acting right now and imitating an autistic child losing her shit. Like, I genuinely believed that Jimly was losing her shit in that moment.
Yeah, like that one moment when she's like really doing it back in Barfi's house, and he comes back in and he has to like hold her and try to restrain her, and he's trying. That whole moment was like this really beautiful and like sort of hard to watch thing, you know? I thought they were really great in that moment and throughout the whole thing, but that moment particularly.
Going back to Ranbir Kapoor, he was really dialed in to the style that Anurag Basu was going for. In terms of Chaplin and Buster Keaton, like even the way the film opens up, where he's pretending to brush his teeth as the cop is about to kick the door and he just walks past him, and that kind of, you know, Chaplin-esque style. I think
perfect.
I think he did such a good job with that. It's not just doing that. Also, what Chaplin was good at was moving you. There's a movie called The Kid, and I remember in film school learning about the movie The Kid and how Chaplin one moment was having you laugh and the next moment was having you cry, and then going back to having you laugh again. And I think that Ranbir Kapoor was like the perfect guy to do this because he was able to walk that fine line going between the drama and the comedy. He has that Chaplin personality in this movie just dialed in, and I really, really like it. The supporting cast did a great job. You weren't as much of a fan of Ileana D'Cruz, you said.
It wasn't like her acting, she was great. It was like her storyline. It was like...
Okay, it was the character more so.
Yeah, it may also have been me buying into the story, and I'm like, what are you thinking, lady? Stuff coming back into Barfi's life.
Yeah, exactly. Let him be.
Leave him.
Okay, I can see that. Okay, I like Ileana D'Cruz. She, to me, exemplified the legacy of Bollywood style being in the movie, because while the film was going in these different cinematic directions, she was a representation of Bollywood, in my opinion.
She kept that one foot in the Bollywood door.
Yeah, there's a scene when Barfi is on the train and she's like chasing the train, and I don't know exactly what that's calling back to, but I have a strong suspicion that that is a classic Bollywood moment of her chasing the train. I might be mistaken, y'all might correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure If I remember correctly, that is a homage, calling back to things. The cop who was chasing Barfi through the whole film, I actually really liked him. I thought that he did a good job. You're dealing with a guy who's in this kind of whimsical universe, but he has to be the serious straight face. He did a good job of reacting to all the things happening around him. And you saw at the end of the day that even though he was the antagonist, he also had a heart and he was coming from a good place, and he had a whole story arc himself.
I was gonna say, yeah, and it sort of comes around when you find out more about the ransom thing and how his involvement with that, and him basically telling Elliott Cruz to get out of there with Barfi because they're gonna come for him and they'll set him up basically. And he really had a whole arc. And every time they cut back to present day when they're older, you sort of forget because that's like, it's not there throughout, but it's like there.
Yeah.
But when they're cutting back to there, it's a really neat dynamic to see him then older, somber like that, and then we cut back, and then he's like in the heat of it.
Right.
Younger, he's like frustrated, like I hate Barfi. It's just like it's fun to see that arc happen through this movie with all of them really.
I appreciated the message of the movie, which can be read right here on IMDb. 3 young people learn that love can neither be defined nor contained by society's definitions of normal and abnormal. That's the same message that Shape of Water tried to say to me, and it was lost on me. It worked on me here. I get it. There's still a cynical part of me that goes, yeah, that wouldn't work in real life. But for the sake of the fantasy in the movie, I'm like, I'll just remove that cynical part of me for now, just to buy into this because it's so beautiful. I mean, to me, it's such a wonderful idea that these two people could come together and have something that's just so pure and innocent and beautiful. The message of the film is not lost on me here. Unlike Shape of Water. It's not just a message about that, it's also the message of seize the freaking day, lady. Like, she went back and forth on what to do about Barfi. She's like, I love you, but I don't. I don't know, but my mom. And then she lost it. And that's a very, very good lesson in seize the goddamn day because you don't know what's gonna happen. She spent the rest of her days in regret. And I feel like a lot of us easily end up doing that because we don't take advantage of the opportunity in front of us while it's there. These split-second decisions happen in life where you have to decide which direction you're gonna go, and if you hesitate and don't follow your heart, it could really screw you. And I think that this movie really, really drives that message home.
I don't want to say don't listen to your parents, but maybe she shouldn't have listened to her mom. We all know why they drove back there.
Right.
She didn't just happen to know where this guy she used to love works for no reason. This is the guy I used to love. I feel nothing now. That's why we're here.
Right. Right.
Don't do it. Follow your heart, people.
I agree. Like, a lot of us, especially of Asian descent, are often pulled between like where we want to go and where our mother or where our parents want us to go. And you have to find that fine line and trade off as you get older and move more and more towards what you actually want to do, because otherwise you're living someone else's perspective, someone else's ideology, and it's not your own, and you end up being miserable for it.
And your parents always just want you to be safe
and happy. Yeah. Safe more than happy, but I agree strongly with the message of the film. It gives you a lot of hope. Ideally, it also gives you a lot of inspiration and motivation to do what's right, which is follow your heart instead of following what someone else is telling you your whole life.
I would give this a solid 4 out of 5. Like I said, a lot of my reservations about it were just sort of personal opinion and them maybe not doing it the way I would have done it, or me not loving some of the way things came together. But overall, it came together in a really beautiful way. I would watch this movie again. I'll probably show my fiance. I would love to see more of him. I know you mentioned you saw more of his movies before this, and I want to see more of him. I want to see more of the director. I want to see more of, well, we already know Priyanka Chopra, so.
He did a movie called Jaga Jasoos. I saw Jaga Jasoos first, and I think immediately people compared it to Barfi. And in my opinion, Jaga Jasoos is not as good as Barfi. Stylistically, it's the same, and so it's fascinating to watch in that way, like colors and the dancing and whatnot. It's actually an interesting film. It's more vignettes than it is a cohesive story. And I would have rather seen more of Barfi than the way he did it in Jaga Jasoos. But overall, I still enjoyed Jaga Jasoos, and I think that there's a lot to be inspired by it in the film, just from a cinematic perspective. I give this 4 out of 5 as well, but it's not necessarily the movie's fault. It might be my own thing, and like I said, I didn't know what the songs were saying in the film. I didn't know if it was relevant, and so I had a hard time appreciating those moments. It being a foreign language film for me, I was lost through the middle chunk of the movie because it kept doing this, and I was having a hard time keeping up with it. And so for a minute, I was kind of like checking out and then coming back in, but it all came together and I understood it. It inspired me enough to like want to read about it and understand it more. And then now we're having this long ass dialogue about it, not just for the video, but like we had whole dialogue about this like last night when we watched it. So I think that the film is very, very well executed because of those reasons, but because of like what held me back from fully enjoying it, fully embracing it, I have to give it a 4 out of 5.
The big thing for me, like the takeaway, is that there's something here for everyone. This is really like one of those films where a lot of people, different people, can get a lot of different things. You know, like take our like opinions, like we give it the same score and we have different reasons for why. There's really something there for everyone who loves different types of film. There's the romance, there's the adventure aspect of it, there's this sort of coming of age to it. There's the cinematography. It's all there.
Yeah. You guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Please let us know your thoughts on our thoughts in the comments below. Check out Ricky Elliott on the social media, Raw 2.0. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out our other reactions, reviews, and short films. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. I'm Jaby Koay. This is
Ricky Elliott.
Peace out.